Hey folks, today we're going to look at ZvT with Dimaga on Scrap Station. Now some of the things we're going to look at in particular are going to be how to react to the engineering bay harassment that prevents you from taking your expansion, how to really scout your opponent and figure out what he's doing when you have almost no fast overlords and only a few zerglings, how to really prepare for all possibilities. Notice that overseer and the number of queens when you don't have all the information on your Terran opponent. We're going to see how to really react to your opponent's expansions, and as you see, an island expansion and an extra orbital with their own, as you can see with the gold expansion, how to really prepare your army for mech play by getting good upgrades and a very good army composition. And of course we're going to take a look at how to buy time for that inevitable mech push by harassing our opponent so you can finally engage his head-on army and stop the first push and really win the game in the longer term with your macro gained advantage. So stay tuned. Alright, greetings everyone. Once again, this is Dizzy and I'm translating for Dmitry Filipchuk, aka MTW Dimaga. And today we're going to take a look at a game, a ZvT match from the European ladder on the map Scrap Station. And this game is against Goody. He's a German Terran player. He's a very successful player, especially in the recent couple of months. He's been playing in a lot of tournaments and getting really good results. He just recently actually defeated an ST in the TSL, and he plays very well in the European arena overall. So he's quite a formidable opponent. The map, of course, is Scrap Station, and of course we get that very early scouting with the Overlord. The first Overlord goes to your opponent's base to see what's going on, and the second one goes to your expansion, so you can see if there's an SCV driving by to you and trying to build some pesky things like perhaps even bunkers or engineering base, or just tries to slow you down. Usually, of course, I want to get a 15 or 16 hatch here, and otherwise, if he builds his engineering bay, he does slow me down a little bit. But there's a way we can react to it. Of course, we have to switch to building a pool and getting a gas and clearing it out. But it is a very strong opener Terrans can do on this map. So right here, my Overlord sees that he has a decent number of SCVs, no gas I can see in the map. As my drone drives by, I can see actually that he does have that engineering bay in my natural, and of course right away I put a pool at home and I put a gas, and the engineering bay has a lot of HP on it, so I can't really pull any drones to kill it. As my my Overlord also scouts a barracks and a gas building at his choke and in his base, I know that there's not going to be any kind of tricky play from him. He's going standard, and I'm not worried about any kind of more bunkers or proxy barracks building against me. He can't have the money for it. So here I save a number of larvae so I can get 4 or 6 lings, so I can clear out that engineering bay and then scout a little bit, see what he's up, because my Overlord of course is only hovering above his expansion, otherwise Marines could snipe it. Here I order Queen as well, and even though I'm delayed on my expansion, my opening is alright. I changed my build to get that pool opening. So here I'm saving gas, I'm saving 100 gas, and then I'm gonna get speed if I need to. And then I'll pull those drones, of course, off, as you see, and I mine minerals once again, because you need minerals early on. Gas is more so used for getting fighting units later on, or perhaps a particular upgrade. And right now we really need to get the minerals to get our hatchery going. And here I place my hatchery at my expansion, and it's quite a bit delayed because it is enduring bay play, but my tech was a little bit earlier and my zerglings are playing on the map. So right here I sent my zerglings all over the map, see perhaps if he's hiding an SCV somewhere here, but I don't spot anything. And I sent 1 zergling to his base, and remember, it's really important to only send 1, because if there's Helions coming, they will kill your zerglings and you're going to be very much in trouble if you get it sniped. So right here I run up and I do see a factory, but I don't see anything building. I don't see a tech lab on it or no reactor either. So this is perhaps indicative of some sort of starboard play, or perhaps a later on mech opening. So because of this, of course, I order another queen, a third queen from my main, and you know, I'm just waiting, getting an extra gas here as well. So he can either expand or he can mass banshees at this point. Now at this point I am not exactly sure what he's up to, but any of my openings, or rather any of his openings, can be countered by just building a number of queens here. And no matter what good he does, and he's quite a tricky player oftentimes, you know, I can counter it. I even canceled the, you know, almost last second, the speed on Zerglings, because I need that gas right now once again, because I need to get an Overseer and maybe need to get a Spire as well. And I don't need Zerglings because I don't see any kind of healing opening or anything like that. So right here I'm pumping my economy, injecting so on and so forth, and getting drones ready, and just trying to keep my eye on the Overlord in the top left by his base to see if I can spot some SCVs mining if he's trying to get an expansion. And of course, as you see, my Zerglings are a little bit ahead in my base to spot the incoming Banshees. And of course I'm gonna get an Overseer as quick as I can. Of course, that Overseer is both for defensive purposes to spot Banshees, and it's also used to scout your opponent in just a second here and see exactly what he's up to. And at the same time, I get speed for Overseers and I get a Spire. So right there I spot a Viking, and that's a starboard opening, of course, for my opponent, so I need to be a little bit careful. But I know that I can order a number of workers here, and as my Overseer flies over the island expansion, I see there's a expansion, and he played like that. He knew that, of course, my Overlord scouting was gonna have to go towards my natural at first, and I just didn't have time to scout that. So, you know, I hope my build is adequate for him, but at this point I know that I need to get my third base, and what I do is I go to the gold base and I build my expansion there. So the Viking, of course, is trying to snipe me, rather my Overlord there, but that's alright. If I'm gonna get my third base going, I'll be very well in, of course, economy, as opposed to my opponent. I also send forlings to attack the rocks at the fourth expansion I could take, because I really don't want to take the close expansion to the Zilaga cavern, or rather Zilaga tower, right away, because that is very easily sieged by my opponent. Of course, you can also do a very cool maneuver here if your opponent takes the island expansion, and you can put a Nidus Worm. So in the meantime, of course, my Overseer scouts his base, and I see he's got a tank, and I don't see many Marines, and you know, Goop his building there, and I see that he's got, you know, an extra orbital right there. So he's gonna have quite a strong economy, but I do see that he's going to go for mech play. Based on the buildings he's got in his base, based on the amount of gas geysers he's got, he seems to be going for, of course, mech play. Now with the Mutalisk that just spawned, I could either harass him or I could go to his, of course, island expansion and put a Nidus Worm there. My Mutalisks fly by to, of course, his expansion to try to see if I can push him back from getting his expansion. That's gonna both keep him in his base and not be able to harass my third in the gold, of course, and it'll delay his own economy timing. I also get a number of evolution chambers so I can get upgrades for my ground troops. So this orbital command center is gonna have to actually pull back, because 7 Mutalisks are more than a match for a single Viking. And you know, he's a little bit pressured in the meantime. So here I want to get roaches, and because I see that through, I'm, you know, 100% sure my opponent is going for a mech build, and it's quite a powerful build, of course, on this map. scrap station has very many chokes, and engaging your opponent is tough. So here I'm gonna get a base on the 4th location, a further location of course from my opponent. He's going to play a turtle style. He's going to push out slowly with tanks, Helions, Thors, things like that, and I want to keep my base as far away from him, because that close base, if he gets his 4th base, my base is going to be basically 2 siege locations away from him. I also get my excuse me, gas at the gold expansion, and I continue just spreading my creep all over the map. Now, the important thing against Mech play is mobility. Mech, because of its siege on siege nature and the slow speed of Thors, is quite slow to react to harassment all over the map. So you really want to have your creep highway going all over the place, and you want to really keep him as far away from the locations you want to attack as possible by being very mobile. So right here my Mutalisks of course fly by his expansion. I try to see if I can get a Nidus, but there's a Banshee there, and of course I'm a little bit unsuccessful, and I lose a couple of Mutalisks too, but it's alright. I did keep him a little bit on his toes. I killed a Banshee, and it was better than nothing at all. So I get my workers on my 4th base, and I add another macro hatchery in my main, and so this way I'm going to have a lot of larvae available to me. And of course I get attack to my Mutalisks, because again, remember, Mutalisks really shouldn't engage one-on-one. They're more of a harassment unit, so you really want to have that attack upgrade over the armor upgrade. And as you see here, my creep is actually basically covered more than half of the map right now. I've got a very strong creep highway through the middle, and I've got a creep highway, of course, to the Dimaga tower. It's really important to get as much gas as possible. As you see, I add a number of extractors more, because gas is basically what you need to build your units. As you saw there also, of course my upgrades finished in my extractors, and it's also very important against a sieged mech army to keep as many upgrades going for your ground troops as possible. So at this point I know that he's going to be trying to go for some sort of push fairly soon. I see he's got a number of tanks, Helions, and Thors, and it's very tough to play against this kind of style, and you really need to abuse the lack of mobility of the Terran opponent, because fighting him head on is very tough. As soon as I saw him show me his units, I took a number of my Mutalisks and I started harassing, flying over the map, and I put this of course Nidus Swarm on his high ground just to keep him a little bit more occupied while my troops get maxed out, because I've got quite a strong economy and a number of upgrades upcoming, and I want to just wait until I get those of course upgrades. I also get a Ultralisk Cavern and a Greater Spire, so right here I've got basically all the tech I possibly want. And I also of course order a number of Corruptors, because against tanks and Thors there's really no better unit to engage that with than Broodlords, because Broodlords force tanks to unsiege. Of course my natural 3rd is really my 5th base, and it's going to be the location I'm going to have to defend if my Terran opponent wants to take his own 4th location. And I see in the minimap that he's actually pushing out, and this is going to be a pivotal defense right here, and watch what's going to happen. Now remember, I've had a number of infestors saved up with energy, and I've got these Broodlords coming in. So right here he's pushing in, and of course my creep highway is there, and I can maneuver my units. So right here, as my ground army engages his troops, and keep in mind to keep your Zerglings in the back, my Broodlers come in and they start really mopping up those slow damage dealing units such as Thors and tanks. And even though it looks like he wiped out the majority of my ground army, right here my Broodlords are enough to wipe out and push back his army. So guys, stay tuned for part 2 of this video. We're going to take a look at how to take this advantage that we build up with the bases and really put it into a winning game. Alright folks, let's go ahead and wrap up what we learned in this opening round of this TVZ. It's really important to react to our opponent while developing our economy. We really want to stay ahead on bases, especially if our opponent sneaks expansions. We want to develop tech trees and expansions, and of course have a lot of gas available. We want to harass the mobile mech army to keep them off balance. And finally, because of the advantages we've gained, we want to have the right tech patterns to really stop the push of our opponent. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video on how to end the game.